Now, I'm no stranger to giving the prequels a hard time, because even though I grew up with them, I still believe they have a lot of flaws. A lot of flaws. But so does so much other shit that I like Fairy Tail, the Transformers, the Star Wars sequels, my YouTube channel. Something being flawed doesn't mean it can't still have a special place in your heart. If you love something but still acknowledge its imperfections, you demonstrate that you're a mature person who understands the importance of criticism and improvement. Basically, accepting the bad things in life will help you see the better things so much more clearly. It's like what Samwise Gamgee said.
And when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer.
So yes, just because I've spoken negatively towards the prequels before, it doesn't mean I don't absolutely adore them. The thing is, the prequels don't need much new love, because like 80% of the internet already see them as the greatest movies of all time and worship them like the fucking Bible. Yes, I've criticized the prequels before when attempting to lift the sequels up, but don't you worry, I'll do the reverse thing today. There are definitely some things that the prequels do better than any of the other trilogies. Like, I think we can all agree that the lightsaber fights in the prequels are the best, or at least the most fun out of all three trilogies. Trilogy of trilogies. When I say best, I'm mainly referring to the Darth Maul fight and the final fight, because the other ones are fucking horseshit. What the fuck is this? It's horrendous! It makes me cry at night. The Darth Maul fight is by far the best thing about the Phantom Menace, a film that most of you will know that I don't think is that impressive as a movie. However, this fight completely makes up for all the awkward and lifeless dialogue, the Mr. Clean level CGI, the mundane and one-dimensional characters, an ugly puppet Yoda, and makes this movie a masterpiece. At least to me. Alright, yeah, this was supposed to be a friendly video where I praise the prequels for what they do well, and I told myself from the beginning that I try not to be affected by bias. So yeah, I just had to let it out, but it's over now. I promise. No, but the prequels do actually have a very dear place in my heart. I grew up with them. I probably watched Revenge of the Sith more times than all the other Star Wars movies combined. Is it the best Star Wars movie in my opinion? No, not at all. But I still love it to death. It's by far my favorite time period. I love the prequels, and I'll tell you why. Oh, so this video really will not have any structure, as you can probably tell from my complete abandonment of the lightsaber fights. But that's because this video won't look at all the material and objectively good shit that makes these movies great, like the world building, Revenge of the Sith's beautiful CGI long shot at the beginning, or the fucking epic lightsaber battles. No, today I want to take a look at the brilliant philosophical questions being examined in the prequels, which trust me is more interesting than it sounds. But first, we need some background information. One of the things that really makes the prequels a good trilogy is its structure and cohesion. With an unmistakable thread running through it, the movies feel connected. The biggest flaw of the sequel trilogy is the greatest strength of the prequels. It feels like an actual trilogy, a possibly dysfunctional one at that, but a trilogy nonetheless. There aren't any unnecessary retcons that break the flow of the movies, and I love that shit. Even if the structure of the films themselves can sometimes be messy, there's no doubt this trilogy as a whole is cohesive, and it actually has a very interesting moral theme running through it, this being the concept of good and evil. This is actually a theme that all the trilogies look at. The original trilogy contains a more simplified version of this theme, as good and evil are so clearly defined in these movies. It's not so much about what it means to be good or evil, but rather that you choose your own path, and it's never too late to change. The sequels look deeper at the internal struggle of good and evil, and how life is always more complex than just black and white. They both execute this theme really well, and it paves the way for interesting topics within the stories. However, in the prequels, this question is the very foundation of the story itself. The prequel trilogy is all about the fall of Anakin, and what's the biggest reason for his failure? Well, the failure of the Jedi. The ignorance and arrogance and hubris of the Jedi, along with their restrictive rules and regulations, are the reason Anakin doesn't learn how to deal with his emotions and goes apeshit. It's the supposedly good guys that are wrong. That's not something we've seen in the other trilogies. The Emperor and the Empire are evil. They're wrong. Snoke, Kylo, and the First Order are wrong. They're the villains. Even though Kylo's more complex than that, we still know he's wrong. And he finally gets redeemed by turning to the good side. The villains are just evil in Star Wars, but not in the prequels. Well, yes, actually, the villains are evil, but the good guys aren't necessarily good. This is brilliant writing, and I love it. I love this trilogy. Masterpiece. Alright, let me slow down a bit and explain this properly, because it's actually a really cool and well-developed moral question. Let's start from the beginning. The Phantom Menace sets up everything it needs to set up. We get Anakin's backstory. We know he's a humble, emotion-driven young lad who cares about others, mainly his mom and Padme. He risks his fucking life to help some strangers. And even though they're cool, and he's a boy and obviously he'd love to help them, that's still very admirable from a young chap. Anakin has a good heart. However, we also learn that the Jedi don't like this. They don't like compassion or love or sympathy, and they don't like emotions because it blinds you. They don't want to train Anakin because he misses his mom, and because that will definitely get in the way of his training. Even though having something to fight for makes you so much more determined to fight. Stupid ignorant Yoda, fucking 900 years old, and hasn't even read a single fucking psychology book. But I digress. Anakin's relationship with the Jedi Order is brilliantly introduced, and we know Anakin's motivations. We even see the difference between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, with Obi-Wan being a lot more bratty and Percy Weasley-ish. And since Qui-Gon fucking dies, Anakin is left to be trained by this fucking bratty Percy Weasley. It really isn't looking good for poor Anakin. He's a very emotion-driven person who has strong bonds with the people he meets. But then he gets put into an order that tells him to neglect these emotions and suppress them, saying that if he shows emotion, then he'll be kicked out of the order, and he'll be forced to return to Tatooine and be a slave again. Okay, I don't know if that's actually what would happen, but whatever it is, I'm sure it would be bad. The Phantom Menace sets up this incoming disaster so well. I find this movie kinda dull at times with a lot of useless scenes, but as the first movie of a trilogy, it's very good setup. Now, Attack of the Clones is where things really start to get spicy. Anakin is now a young man, ripe with recklessness and horniness, which is just the worst time to be suppressed in celibacy. Anyways, he reunites with Padme and falls in love with her. Because of course he would, she's hot as fuck. And just look at him, he's not looking for personality. He just wants booty. But so they fall in love and get married. He's already broken one of the main rules of his order. But then he gets a vision that his mom is dying. He goes to save her, but she dies in his arms. He then goes on a murderous rampage which not only shows us that his emotions control him, but also sets up the backbone of his eventual turn. Him not being able to save his own mother leaves him in sorrow and pain, and most of all in fear of losing the best thing that has ever happened to him, which also happens to be one of the only good things in his life. So yes, Anakin displays great depth in this movie, as his motivations are so clearly established. He's already lost his mother, and he won't lose Padme no matter what. Remember that. No matter what. Now, that's not it for Attack of the Clones, because we get even more of this sweet philosophy and morality as the war begins. This next idea was actually pointed out to me by a person on my Discord, which you should definitely join, by the way, link is in the comments. It's actually very intriguing. So the droids are sentient, right? They feel emotions like fear and joy, which we see in the movies, and they can choose to go wherever they want. They were crafted for the sole purpose of war. That's morally wrong, right? Well, what if I told you the clones are exactly the same? They were crafted for war purposes only, and while they have sentient emotions, they're programmed to follow orders. There's really just no difference between the armies used by the Trade Federation and the Republic. This doesn't really mean much, like it doesn't show that they're wrong. It doesn't show that they're wrong for creating an army. It's just interesting to think that the two sides are pretty much the exact same, just with different moral perspectives. It's not just good and evil. Attack of the Clones did a great job expanding on the ideas brought up in the Phantom Menace, and it did an amazing job at solidifying Anakin's motivations. It has all been leading up to this final episode, the catalyst, as my higher level chemistry self likes to call it. We can probably all agree that this is the best of the bunch. Revenge of the Sith is the climax of the trilogy, and definitely provides the most input into this moral question. From the beginning, we see Anakin beginning to crack, as he kills Count Dooku under the influence of Sidious. And this is something that everyone knows, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The whole, "he was too dangerous to be kept alive" line is said by both Sidious and Mace Windu, showing that there's really no difference between the Sith and the Jedi. So Anakin might as well choose the side that will help him save Padme, which is basically all he lives for at this point. After he crash lands a massive cruiser, he finds out that Padme is having a child, but then right after that he sees a vision of her death. He's having a very confusing day today. Sidious knows this, of course, and tells him the story of "doth plagues the wise," and how Anakin can potentially learn to save Padme with the dark side. Then yada yada yada, Sidious reveals himself to be a Dark Lord. Now, Anakin doesn't just immediately switch sides. He does what he's been taught to do, the right thing, which is turning Sidious in because he's evil and a psychopath. Then he realizes it wasn't the right thing to do because Mace Windu is an evil psychopath too, acting on the Jedi's orders. He helps Sidious kill Mace Windu, and that's that. There's no going back at this point. He has officially lost faith in the Jedi. He only sees Padme now. She's his one goal. Everything relies on him saving her. Now, most of you will know that I don't really like how quick Anakin's turn is. The motivations are all there, so it's not necessarily a problem with the writing, but rather the structure of the writing. It just feels too rushed and out of the blue. However, if you take the time to explore it yourself, then it's really fucking brilliant. And sad. Him tearing down his whole life, slaughtering friends and innocents, all in the pursuit of saving his wife and unborn child. It's emotional, and you can see how it affects him. His confrontation with Obi-Wan on Mustafar, is the icing on the cake, the prick over the eye, as an ignorant Danish politician would say. The line,
"Only a Sith deals in absolutes."
It's just perfect. It really cements the hypocrisy of the Jedi Order, and how Anakin is not just evil and a villain. Rather, the Jedi Order failed him. He always tried doing the right thing, but the Order didn't always let him do this, because it meant showing emotions. Anakin was extremely powerful and passionate, but most importantly, compassionate. However, he was unstable as well. Like for most people, life is complex, especially since he joined this order at an age where he had already crafted some of his individualism. He wasn't allowed to be the man he was, or love the woman he loved, or feel the things he needed to feel. The Jedi aren't evil, but they certainly aren't saints either. This trilogy took such a drastic turn from the originals, as here it wasn't about heroically choosing between good or evil. It was a tragic story of how a society crumbles from ignorance. It's such a deep and complex question that this trilogy attempts to answer, and it's easy to miss if you're just casually watching them. The Jedi have great intentions, as they're supposed to protect the innocent. But good intent is not the same as good actions. The Jedi symbolize hypocrisy and ignorance, as without evolution, you run the risk of caving in on yourself. So yeah, that's why the Star Wars prequels are pretty awesome. Of course there are other good things about these movies, but the philosophy was just the part I was most interested in, and wanted to explore a bit, so I made a video on it. But also because I want you all to give me your reasons for liking or even loving this trilogy. I'm sure you can all think of at least something. Let's try to have a civilized discussion, so no being an asshole. They're just movies, Dumbo. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. It is rare that my Star Wars videos are this lighthearted and tame, because it's usually just me responding to other YouTubers, who are much better than me. Hence my like to dislike ratio. But yeah, I just felt like I needed to get this off my chest, because I really do love this trilogy and I don't think it shows in a lot of my videos. Anyways, like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you all next time. Stay safe and peace out.